Now, for the first time ever, more than 150 local authorities in England are introducing a 100% premium on council tax for second homes after being given the green light from the government to do so.
It's a step in the right direction. I think it's very much endemic of the current Labour Party that it's a nice idea, but it's nowhere near as far-reaching as we need to go. We need to take, in my view, a property tax style system that the Americans have, where it's based on the value of your property. That if your property's worth, like Buckingham Palace, worth a lot, you pay a lot more than, say, the guy in a one-bed terrace. Yet, in the current system, the guy in Buckingham Palace pays the same as the terrace house.
That's true, but what about second homeowners, Ross?
So apologies, I was just going to go to that. Second homes, we need to target them and tax them heavily because you mentioned Cornwall. Cornwall has 14,000 empty homes that are second homes just not being used for the majority of the year. While we have a housing crisis, I saw a great quote. Somebody said that housing should be treated like dinner at school. No seconds until everybody had some.
I love that. That's a really good one. Very good. Go on.
I find it an absolute abomination that we have people with multiple homes, even if it's just two, whilst we have a growing homelessness crisis and a crisis for young first-time buyers, where the majority of them aren't going to own property ever in their lives.
So, Ross, therefore, should the consequence of that be an outright ban compared to just simply doubling the council tax, which is only going to fill councils' coffers? It's not going to help anyone who's trying to get on a housing ladder.
I think a ban is a long-term solution. That's what I would like them to do.
Right.
But at the current council funding crisis that we have in the UK, they have to make up that revenue. And with things like adult social care being one of the only legal duties councils have, being the majority of their budget, they have to make some money to, fund these kind of things. And I find it very funny you mentioned the pensioner. Pensioners are the biggest drain on council funding. They're the most likely people to own second homes. Sorry, you've got to pay for things. It's not the young's fault that you didn't save.
But Ross, if someone has worked hard all their life and they have a home in a city where they grew up, where they spent most of their life, and now they want to have a bolt hole somewhere else, or indeed they want to retire to the countryside and have a bolt hole in London, why shouldn't they be allowed to do that? Why should their civil liberties be infringed simply because they've got a few bob and they've worked hard?
Because you don't have the right to just own unlimited property. You don't have the right to just buy up entire swaths of the UK because you've got enough money. And obviously second-home buyers aren't buying up swaths of the UK. But we're in a crisis, a housing crisis, similar to after World War II. After World War II, we didn't say, it's the right of people to just own as many properties as possible. We said we need to build masses of social housing and fund it through taxes. And that's what we need to do now. And this is one step on the way. But it's, like I said, it's endemic of Labour not going far enough because they're scared of being attacked by the right-wing media.
Ross, do you think that the Big C is the answer to our problems? The Big C being communism?
No. Communism doesn't work. It never works anywhere.
It sounds pretty communist to me to be able to say to people dictatorially from the centre, from Whitehall, that thou shalt not have a second home, despite however hard you've worked, because the state shall mandate how many homes you should have.
Okay, so the majority of the people that own second homes, like I said, are people, over the age of 60, which is understandable. Like you said, they've worked hard. No one's disputing that.
Yeah.
They grew up in a time where the government did build masses of housing. The government did tax the rich more than the poor. And yet they're telling people of my age, we're going to lower taxes on the very rich, keep them in line for second home buyers, and not build anything because you've got to pull yourself up. We have to live in capitalism. They get to live in social democracy in their wealth-building era.
I think that's a really, really interesting observation, Ross. I like your comeback, and it's actually made me think. I mean, you'd be more relaxed about people having second homes if it was a level playing field and capitalism was working properly.
In second homes, I'm all for people, middle class, working class, whatever, owning a second home.
Yeah.
But you can't, through your entire working life, as it were, my age.
Yeah.
Have the government step in, and then as soon as you retire and have wealth, say, no, the government should step away. leave the young to suffer, because I want to have multiple homes.
Interesting. Really interesting. Great call. Thank you, Ross, for getting us underway.
We've been through this process about 7 years ago. We bought a second property basically, we were going to convert it into a bakery.
Mm-hmm.
When we put planning in, the council didn't even know this property existed. And because it had been empty for about 50 years, they deemed it as being a residential property that was converted into commercial. Right. And they charged us 5 times the council rate every month because it had been empty for so long. So we were paying £1,000 a month for 2 years. We had no gas, no water, no electric, no roof. But they said because it was they believed it was an ex-residential property because it had been empty so long. They just said if it's empty for more than 10 years, you get hit with a council tax rate.
How did that make you feel, Andrew?
Annoyed. I even tried to say, well, okay, I'll move into the property then. And they said, well, okay, you'll have to send us a copy of your driving license or passport with the new address on. Yeah. Basically, it was like we want the money. They'd rather the property be empty, to be fair, than before we put planning in, they didn't even know it existed.
Andrew, forgive my impertinence, but I'm going to ask you a question that a lot of people will be thinking about, I'm sure, listening to this program. Why do you need a second home?
So we bought it. It's like an old Victorian property, but it's clearly been used for commercial purposes before. So we bought it to convert into a bakery for the family. Mm-hmm. So we bought it for that reason. So it's not actually a livable house. And it clearly never had somebody living there, but the council seemed to believe it was a residential property.
What do you make of this idea to double the council tax on second homes?
It didn't stop us, but we had no choice because it was kind of like our business was going to be.
Yes, slightly different in that case. It was a business rather than a second home,
Yeah, but I think if it was my second home, then I think if I was paying £1,000 a month, I'd soon be thinking, I'm not paying.
Is it worth it?
I'm not paying an additional 12 grand a year for council tax.
Well, the thing is, a lot of people apparently are selling up, but I'm not sure it's going to make a blind bit of difference to people at the bottom end trying to actually get on the housing ladder. But we shall see. Andrew, thank you. Jerry in Enfield, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I kind of very much agree with you that it is just kind of a grab for money. I mean, I have a second property, which I kind of use occasionally, but I'm not using things like schools or health or social services. And when things do go wrong in the property, I engage local craftsmen, local builders, local electricians and things like that. So you're kind of like bringing money to the local economy. I've got to be paying from 1st of April. Twice my neighbours that have children at school and, relatives with social care needs and what have you. I'm going to be paying sort of, basically twice the amount that they do.
Jerry, why can't you use a hotel?
I do use a hotel, but it's nice to have a kind of space that you can kind of,
I understand.
Get away from work and work there if necessary with the, flexibility that
I do understand that point, and I also think that, this is where you get into a civil liberties argument that if you've worked hard, the state should not be mandating exactly what you should be able to spend your money on, including housing stock. However, do you feel, Jerry, that there's a social democratic duty that must be done on the part of existing second home owners to effectively give up that second home because we have a housing crisis in this country?
I mean, I personally don't. I mean, there may be others that do because I'm concerned about, I'm sort of, planning for my family and things like that. And eventually that will, pass on to family members who aren't able to get on. I know I'm in a very lucky, privileged position to be able to do that. But, I'm thinking about my, the immediacy of my sort of, family and family members' needs and things like that.
Where would you recommend getting a second home, Jerry?
Well, mine's in Somerset, which is a nice...
Well, it's a beautiful part of the world.
So my thoughts are that it doesn't go anywhere near far enough. I think that the vast majority of second homes are used for rental purposes. I think that the rental market is crippling young people by charging triple the amount on rent as you would be paying in a mortgage, which means they can't save up to get on the housing ladder in the first place. I think that we need to look at taxing passive income like rental income at something like 90% to discourage people from seeing it as a way of making a passive income. And I think this tax is good on second properties. I just don't think it goes anywhere near far enough to discouraging people from taking advantage of young and poor people for a passive income.
But Matt, sometimes people want to rent. They don't want to buy. They don't want to have the hassle of having a mortgage and everything that goes with it. They want to be footloose and fancy free. And if someone's worked hard and wants to have a second home to rent out, it's fine. The issue here is not so much, as I understand it, the fact that people are renting it out. It's where people are not renting it out and actually using it for themselves, and not there's a certain period of days that you have to be a minimum number of days a year, which you have to be renting this thing out. If you're not, then you're going to be paying double the council tax. This is not necessarily a rental question. It's an empty second homes question, isn't it?
A couple of things. One, I think we've always lived in a society that has rewarded working smart, not working hard. So anyone that says, I've worked hard, therefore I deserve X, it's not true. You would go work on a building site, then go work in an IT firm, see who works harder.
You're telling me investment bankers in Canary Wharf are not working hard? I can tell you they are.
Oh, I will categorically tell you they're not. If you
I
go
can
out
tell
in
you
London,
they are. Have you spoken to them, Matt?
Who does more? Yeah, I've got friends that live in London, work in London.
Right.
There is no correlation between working hard and getting rich. There is a much better correlation in the type of work that you do and getting rich.
I don't disagree with you. I don't
disagree
with you. I'm just saying that
that's
people
not really
do
the
work
point.
hard. Go on.
The point I'm saying is that this tax is maybe it's a taxation on just people that own second homes and don't rent them out. Yeah. If it is, that's even more of a problem, because what we need to target is people that see second homes and see multiple houses as a form of passive income.
That's a different question. That's an important
huge problem.
Yeah, that's an important question, and it's a bigger question, and it's a slightly different one, because that's whether we should even be allowing people to have homes to rent, right, as a property empire. But this is really talking about homes that are not being put on the rental market, being used by individuals for their own use. Matt, thank you for... No, go on, finish your point. Go on, Matt.
I was going to say, I do think that the people that aren't using them to rent really need to look at the housing crisis. And like you said, there's lots of alternatives. You could stay in a hotel, you can do this, you can do that.
Matt, I must be honest. If I had the time, I might actually use a second home, but I wouldn't want to invest in it if I wasn't going there at least every week or every other week. What is the point of doing it? And I personally find it better to go to a hotel, but that's just my own decision. I wouldn't want to legislate to others how they should live their lives.
I don't think you can ban them altogether, but that's the whole point of the taxation system.
I see.
Other than is to get money to run the NHS, is to go, this is good, this is bad.
Okay.
It's causing big issues in areas like mine in Dorset.
Okay.
Because this is a great place to live.
It's a lovely place.
But people like my wife who grew up here and want to live here because because her family's there, now means that house prices are comparable to just outside London. That's whereas you go to somewhere in the Midlands, which is not as desirable, and house prices are a lot cheaper. Yet we're competing for the same jobs, especially now that we've got a much more mobile job industry where you can work from home. It means that I'm earning £25,000 a year, as is for someone in the Midlands, yet my salary is all going on a mortgage because I happen to live in a place where it's more desirable for second homes. And that's the unintended consequences that government has to consider. Governments are supposed to tax things that cause unintended consequences, what they're doing.
I think it's a very good point, Matt, and the question is doubling the council tax enough of a deterrent?
The caller that you had before, Matt, I think, who was making some representations about how people who have second properties should be taxed to the hilt for it. I've recently retired from working in the Middle East, so I have to invest my lump sum I got to provide a pension income. So I bought 2 apartments in Manchester, which I rent out. The interest-only mortgage cost me about £1,600 for each one. The rental I get at the moment is £2,100 a month, and I have to pay management fees for the agent on top of that, about £200 a month. So at the moment, if I was taxed fully on all the rental income, I'd be losing £11,000 a year.
But Geoff, we're not
current situation.
Yeah, but Geoff, this issue is slightly different. So we're not having we're not having a conversation about rental.
I understand.
Go on.
Let me continue my point.
Yeah.
So in order to prevent me from losing money, I'm going to have to sell them in a couple of years' time, and I'll be selling to an overseas investor who lives in the Middle East, who will use it as a second property, and then the government will get no tax whatsoever.
I see your point.
And he can use it as he wishes.
I see your point.
So I'm being pushed into selling something I don't want to. I want to pay tax on them. I want to help provide somewhere for someone to live, but I'm being pushed by the government with their taxable policy of being pushed into sending it for overseas investors to use as a second home. And
but how do you know?
Absolutely nothing.
But how do you know an overseas investor will buy that home from you?
Because I've already been approached. I've already been approached by someone.
Well, I mean, okay, fair enough. I mean, you could sell it to an overseas investor who will then have to pay double the council tax in the similar way to everyone else and not make the tax take to the government. Your argument is the tax take to the government will go down because at the moment you're earning rental income, which you're paying tax on, which will be much more than just doubling the council tax. I get that specific point, Geoff, but the broader point is that councils want to clamp down, one, on this practice because they feel that there's not enough housing stock, and I think there's a cack-handed way of doing it. And B, they want to fill their coffers locally with more tax. They're more concerned about that than the exchequer at the centre.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen though, because he will then find an exclusive right, or which will excuse him from the council tax. They'll find something to avoid paying as much council tax. Okay. He'll say it's rented to a student for 3 months of the year.
Well, that's just defrauding, unless that's true.
He's outside the country, he won't mind.
Okay, well, I mean, look, okay, fine. Well, we can't base a programme around people who might defraud the system. No. But I understand the point you're making. But on that basis, I mean, anyone could defraud anything, and we're all going to condemn that kind of behaviour.
We have had a second home in Tideswell for 25 years. I have been involved with activities in the village. We go to events in the village, and we have just been informed that our rates are going up to over 4,000 a year.
You're one of the people,
Yeah. But if we rented it, we wouldn't pay extra.
That's right.
If we let it as holiday lets, we wouldn't pay extra.
For how long, Brian, would you have to let it as holiday lets? Do you know?
I'm not certain, no.
Yeah, because I think I agree with you on the rental point, because you're basically providing housing stock in the local area that other people can use. This is meant to be, as I understand it, designed for people who are not doing that, who are benefiting from themselves as a second home, and they should pay the price for doing it. Brian, if you want a second home, it's a choice. What's wrong with paying extra council tax for that?
It's like what I think you said earlier. It's just all the councils are absolutely strapped for cash, and it's whatever means they can find to get extra money in.
Is it going to help the people of Tideswell who are trying to get on the property ladder, Brian?
There are a number of properties up for sale in the village, but the other problem is there's no jobs.
Well, that's another issue.
See, they've got to move out either into Sheffield or Manchester.
Right. Well, that's a bigger question then.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you're being put upon, Brian, that you're being unfairly targeted by this measure?
Personally, yes.
Well, a lot of people...
we don't use the facilities, like buses. If you go into any of the bigger towns, after 5 o'clock, you're lucky to get a bus to get home.
Well, this is the point that's being made by the Taxpayers Alliance and others, that the principle of council tax is you pay for the services you use. If you're not paying for the services you use as much as other people, you should be paying less council tax, not double the amount, and therefore it's unfair. Other people clearly take a different view, as you've heard so far with some of the callers. Brian, thank you for your call.
Well, originally, when we first purchased it, we got a 25% reduction in the rate. And that was for about 1 or 2 years, and then they stopped that and brought in you paid full.
How interesting. Well, now you're going to be paying double. Brian, thanks for your call. I appreciate it. Matt says this: perhaps those affected by the second home tax could cut their Netflix, reduce their consumption of avocados. The they worked hard argument doesn't wash with me either. Plenty of people work very hard to make ends meet, let alone buying second homes.